You're listening to the VikesVerified podcast. Welcome back to the VikesVerified podcast. Some pretty somber vibes in the booth this evening. Vikings fall in the wild card round to the New York Giants 31-24 in what is the end to a magical season. They outplayed us top to bottom. We're going to get into all the details of this, but great game plan from Brian Daboll and company, and the New York Giants were able to come out on top.
Yeah, it's a sad day. It's a bad day. Unfortunately, the Vikings season comes to an end. A really fun and miraculous one in a lot of ways. Tough to see it end this way, especially at home where we were 8-1. But I felt like we just were running out of that luck and that special kind of sauce we had on this season. So a tough one to really swallow, but now me and Nick will kind of look forward at this offseason and some potential changes that may be coming to Vikes Nation and really touch on all things offseason related.
We're going to have to be ready for a lot of change. And the Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Jimmy's Dressing and Dips. Jimmy's Thousand Island is great on a lot more than just chopped salads and Reuben sandwiches. Use it to make a Reuben dip, Reuben pizza, Thousand Island taco salad. List goes on. Jimmy's Dressing and Dips.
Vikes Verified is also sponsored by Duke Cannon. If your hair is a weapon or you wish it was, you won't find better hair and hygiene products for men than Duke Cannon. If you're looking to start taking your salad seriously, start with Serious Flow Lightweight Mane Tamer from Duke Cannon. You can find Duke Cannon products at Target.com.
All right, we're going to get into this here. New York Giants coming out on top in this one. Daniel Jones finishes the game with 301 yards passing and 78 yards rushing. A lot are saying this is the best game of Daniel Jones' career, really, and rightfully so. Everything that he couldn't do with his arm in this game, he was able to do with his legs, and it ended up costing us. Didn't have a great game plan to contain him, QB spy him, not a ton of adjustments made. Overall, I just think we got outplayed. This game comes on the defense. Our offense did just about everything it could until the last drive, moved the football effectively, got it to our key guys in space, but we just weren't able to ever turn it loose and get a couple stops on defense.
Yeah, to me, the problems start defensively for us. I thought the offense did what they needed to do. Kirk Cousins made a lot of plays with not a lot of time, especially with all the pressure that they were bringing. Dexter Lawrence was a huge problem up the middle. We're really going to have to touch on that interior O-line and solve that, because as good as Ezra can be and Garrett Bradbury has been better this year, that pressure in terms of pass pro is just we can't win with that. And we saw it kind of affect Kirk and his dropbacks even on that last play. Which was disappointing to see that check down. But if you really look at the whole play, the time that he had, he didn't really have many other decisions than to drop it down to Hawkinson. So tough to watch that. But again, I think defensively, that's where it starts for me. Ed Donatello is quote unquote saying that we were going to be inspired or like this performance from the defense. And I can tell you just about every fan in that stadium did not like the performance.
You are right.
Same new game, same problems. We have open gaps, not getting pressure when we're close, but we might get a hand on Daniel Jones, but he's a mobile quarterback. He found his way to get out of there and make us pay. These are huge things that I think need to be addressed. That is the main reason why we lost this game. And we're a bottom 2-3 defense in the league. I mean, it's really hard to win and go on a long, deep playoff run with that type of defense. And now, the guy that everyone's talking about is Ed Donatello. Does he stay? Does he go? That's something that, we'll give our thoughts on. But to be quite honest, for him to switch over to a 3-4, I think it put a lot of our key guys that we've known for a while, like Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, in all new positions, which is a tough thing to do. And I think we saw the after effects of that with the defense that was trying to consistently find ways to improve and communicate better, and it just couldn't.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you can obviously, the easy thing to do is blame Ed Donatello out of the gate, and like we have as well. I mean, rightfully so. The lack of adjustments, lack of pressure, something we've been harping on all season. It's easy for the fans to see, but at the end of the day, I do think a lot of things come down to scheme fit as well, like you're saying. This is kind of, I want to say, a recycled Mike Zimmer defense, and we had to make do with the pieces that were given to us under contract. It's very obvious to me at this point that Danielle Hunter and Eric Kendricks both much more effective in a 4-3 defense. I mean, imagine learning that defense for 8 years under Mike Zimmer, and all of a sudden, new regime comes in, you're forced to learn an entirely new system. And in the NFL, where you don't have a lot of time to think on the field, you got to play fast. These guys were out there thinking a lot of the time and just a step late on a lot of plays. So that being said, I mean, a lot of things are unacceptable. The way that teams kind of ignited over the middle of the field against us, I mean, it was something that was always open. If you look at least, I want to say 13, 14 of our 17 games, I mean, we got gashed over the middle multiple times, especially guys like Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins ripping it up on us. I mean, these are not household names. These are not guys that should be getting loose on many defenses in the NFL, especially a playoff defense. But like you said, at this point, just starting to feel a little bit delusional, honestly, to the fact that I believe that this defense could maybe put it together for a playoff run, because these were things that we saw all season and things that came out on tape all season, and Brian Daboll broke them down and exposed them.
Yeah, I mean, I think us being 11-0 in one-score games led us to that delusion. We kept feeling like we would find a way to make that win. And even in this Giants game, you had a Darius Slayton drop that led us to have that opportunity to have that last drive to make that miraculous play. And it just seemed like when that happened, it felt like we were going to go down and drive and score. But at the same time, when it came down to fourth down, it felt like really maybe our luck kind of has ran its course. So that was very tough to see, but I think you brought up a great point. It seems like defensively we had wide open zones playing off man coverage. And really, the Giants are a team that likes to run the ball a lot more. And if you look at their percentages from last Sunday, they actually pass the ball way more than they usually do compared to the run, and that's because of our weak pass defense. It seemed like whether they were checking it down to Saquon or simply running crossers over the middle,
read option,
they just seemed to basically wait for one of the zones to be left open, and they would hit that, and boom, a big play would happen. That stadium had the most energy I've ever been a part of since I've been a part of the Vikings and worked for them. So for me, that was a special experience, but it felt like it was a bit of a wasted one in the sense that that stadium was rocking. And if we could have gotten a couple more stops when we needed to, I think it really could have added on to putting them in a bad spot. But if you look at the stats on paper, this seems like a game that we would win. I mean, Nick, do you want to read off some of these stats? Because to me, if you look on paper, you would never think that we lost this game.
Yeah, the slight thing that sticks out on paper that they had advantage in was just total plays run and time of possession. So they controlled the football. They had a 20-play drive at one point that actually only resulted in 3 points. But looking at the team stats, I mean, first downs, Giants 28, Vikings 21. On third down, New York Giants 7 of 13, Vikings 4 for 10. Total plays, New York Giants 68, Vikings 56. This is where it gets interesting here. New York Giants had 0 sacks in the game. I believe Wink Martindale only brought pressure on 9 of Kirk Cousins' 40 dropbacks. Their game plan was not to come and pressure us. Their game plan was to cover over the top, not let Jefferson get operating down the field, and they did a great job of it. Considering the type of defensive coordinator he is and his track record, he's known to blitz the hell out of the quarterback, really. He's coming after you all the time, exotic packages. That's just what he's made his name in this league, and he threw us a curveball, really, and one that we couldn't hit in that sense. Really covered us over the top. We had to operate underneath a lot of the time. There wasn't many shots to be had. The 2 plays that stick out to me in exposing them, those 2 wheel routes, TJ Hawkinson and Adam Thielen, both wide open right on the sidelines. I mean, really exposed the safety that's blanketing over the top of Jefferson. They gave him a lot of extra help. We were able to expose that a few times. But obviously those few times, it just didn't end up being enough. And it is what it is. But at this point, they gave us something that we probably weren't expecting. And, we had some bad play calls along the way. One I want to specifically touch on is the 3rd and 1 early on in the game. You're thinking maybe, we go stretch Dalvin Cook, fullback dive CJ Ham, even sneak at Kirk Cousins. Instead, we come out with a jet sweep toss to Jefferson where he throws it back across the formation to Kirk Cousins, hoping he can pick up that first down. Obviously expecting man coverage there, got zone, and we were screwed. What are your thoughts on that play?
I mean, if I had one gripe with Kevin O'Connell this past season, it was those 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s, 4th and 1s. Really, on the short yardage plays, he tries to get too cute, and you can't. It's a simple run the ball, QB sneak it. It doesn't matter. A yard's a yard. To me, that first quarter call to have Justin Jefferson, he did have KJ Osborne as an option, but it was a little bit more risky as it was downfield. If you're really trying to get a yard from a backwards pass to Kirk Cousins, I don't see the logic in that. Again, it's getting too cute. I respect his offensive mind and his capabilities, and he's going to get better as this is his rookie year. But if there's one area that I really had to harp on, it would be those third and short calls, because there's multiple games, and specifically the ones we lost, that, you have just interesting play calls that makes you wonder what was the end goal there. And for us, that's something that we're going to need to address. And I think the other thing is finding that second, third wide receiver who can consistently get open when Justin Jefferson gets covered. We saw TJ Hawkinson.
Great day.
Thank God that we traded for him. He's been an absolute beast for us, a stud in every way possible. And is a guy that I don't think will be leaving anytime soon.
Sure hope not.
And then you look at a guy in KJ Osborne, who's our wide receiver 3, but actually seemed to be playing like our wide receiver 2. And as tough as it is to say it for Adam Thielen, I think we're starting to see a decline in his play, especially with his upcoming cap number. I think we just start and talk about some of these veterans that are going to be potentially moving on. And it starts with Thielen, a well-respected guy from Mankato. Shout out Roll Mavs. But to be completely honest, he has not done what his contract justifies. And for when teams shut down Jefferson like the Packers and the Giants did, we have to have another guy who can make them pay for that. And I do think Thielen, I still want to keep him on the team, but we need to look at potentially restructuring him and maybe moving him to a wide receiver 3 or 4 role, because it's time for us to either draft or sign a bona fide wide receiver 2, and it could be KJ Osborne. But that's, I think, where it starts that offense for me with these aging veterans. Nick, who are some other guys in terms of who have been around the block for a while who could potentially have seen their last days in purple?
Well, it just seems like there's too many of them at this point, really. Both of us huge Dalvin Cook fans. Big decision to be made regarding Dalvin Cook. A lot of guys think Madison can step in and be the first string running back next year. I don't blame them. Madison's a productive player. People really they were hard on Dalvin this year for his negative and no gain plays, really. I mean, there's no question he still has the big play ability. He can still hit home runs. But the question is, what's he doing on first and second down, getting, stonewalled at the line of scrimmage 2-3 times in a row? It's about gaining, 4, 5, 6 a pop, trying to do that type of thing. So decision to be made with Dalvin Cook. I like to see him stick around, but maybe they need to rework the numbers. Also, guys like Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, Patrick Peterson, Jordan Hicks, Harrison Smith.
It's an aging defense.
It's an aging defense, and you hate to say that you miss the window. I mean, that's a very common thing to say, but in a way, it feels like it. And it feels like for these guys, we've been able to have that playoff run and have a crack at it so many times now. Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter. You got to wonder if these guys love it here and they want to stick around, or if maybe they're kind of seeing on the other side of things. Maybe I go try something out, get a change of scenery, find a scheme that better fits me. So these are the tough decisions that we're going to have to make this offseason. Obviously, Kwesi was hired for this role. This is his first full offseason, first kind of opportunity to put his fingerprint on the team and draft his guys. He's kind of working with, like I said, Mike Zimmer's kind of leftovers, if you will. Not that these are bad players by any means. These are great football players, but them adjusting to a new scheme and the NFL draft coming up, you just never know how things are going to shake out for these guys. And do not be surprised to see 2, 3, 4, 5 of them leave the team.
That brings up an interesting point. I think it's a good hypothetical for us to get into. I'm going to propose a little situation for you. We'll each give our thoughts. Let's say, these aging veterans that we just mentioned, and we have to make the decisions of cut, re-sign, or restructure them. I'm going to start with the guy in Harrison Smith on that defensive side. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find a way to restructure him. Harrison is a guy, to me, is a bona fide playmaker, a Minnesota Viking through and through. I don't see him wanting to leave, and he's a leader in that locker room and is well respected around the league. I don't think his play has dropped off compared to some of these other veterans. So to me, I find a way to restructure him, still pay him what he deserves, but you got to find a way to keep him on purple.
I agree with you. That's the kind of guy that's got Viking for life written all over him, right? Harrison Smith embodies everything about the team. He's been with us his entire career. Like you said, haven't seen a significant fall off in his performance. I mean, he came out and got some picks this year. He made some good plays, was clearly banged up a little bit towards the tail end of the season with a knee injury. But as long as he can still play, I think you got to try to find a way to keep him in the building, especially with that lack of leadership in the secondary. I mean, if Harrison Smith were to move on and we're looking at, a safety spot of Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, and Lewis Cine, that's a lack of leadership. Metellus did come on as a great leader, as we've previously touched on. Don't get me wrong, but nothing compared to Harrison Smith, honestly, and the experience that he brings to this team.
Yeah, next we'll slide to the linebackers and Eric Kendricks, another guy who's been here since Zimmer started, is well respected around the league and in that locker room as well. All around just a solid player, but it seemed like in this scheme he may not have fit as well as Zimmer's, and it obviously affected his play.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to learn a new position is a lot. So to me, I don't take it as his age knocking him as much as his scheme, which is why I say restructure as well. He's a guy that is going to bring that energy each and every week, and is a guy that I trust and is rangy and can make plays and is a smart player. I attribute it more to this new scheme. So, maybe it comes down to, if we keep that new scheme, how much do you trust in him learning in that second year? But for me, I'm going to go ahead and say restructure Kendricks.
I'm probably going to agree with you, but I'm kind of torn between restructure and cut at this point. Mm-hmm. Like you said, I attribute it to the scheme as well. You're so used to seeing an Eric Kendricks that runs sideline to sideline, a guy that's just playing, at full speed, not thinking about things. And I think part of that too was, Anthony Barr had the green dot. He was calling the defense when Eric Kendricks and him were that all-star tandem in the middle of the defense. And that just let Eric Kendricks be free and fly to the ball carrier, go make plays on receivers. You saw how great he's been in coverage in years past, and that kind of fell off. It seemed like he was almost, a day late, $1 short, one step late to a lot of plays this year. So, fan favorite, huge fan of Eric Kendricks, of course. He brings a lot more just to this team than his skill set. But unfortunately, when you crunch the numbers like Quizzy's going to do and try to figure out how to clear cap space, that doesn't always account for him being a fan favorite.
Yeah, I'm going to slide to his mate and linebacker in Jordan Hicks. I'm going to say cut Hicks, and it's specifically because I think the rise of Asamoah,
yes, give him a chance,
is going to take over there. And he's a guy, and that's maybe where some money comes from. And it really depends on who they value more, Hicks or Kendricks in this defense. I think one of them stays. Mm-hmm. And if I had to guess, I think it's Kendricks just due to his long-term nature here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Asamoah is a guy that showed a lot, is explosive, can go side, east to west very fast. And I think he's going to see an increase in snaps next year. So I could see a guy like Hicks being cut.
I agree with you. Not that he's a bad player, once again, by any means. I thought he made many critical plays this year, game-winning plays, matter of fact. But like you said, the rise of Brian Asamoah and his athletic ability alone, I mean, it's hard not to give the guy a chance to start for this defense. You saw the play he made against the Giants on Christmas Eve. I mean, strips the ball, picks it up, returns it for 25. I mean, that's a anomaly of a play from a linebacker in the NFL to do something that athletic. Everything I've heard is he's tremendous in the locker room as well. Does a lot of the right things within the scheme. So I go ahead and cut Hicks as well.
Yeah, and I think, we can probably finish with a guy in Patrick Peterson, and he comes down to simply, do you re-sign him or not? He's a free agent, played well, PFF, obviously graded out well, made a lot of big plays, is another well-respected veteran, which this defense has plenty of. But I do think he's someone that we need to keep around. I think it ultimately comes down to his dollar sign and how much he's going to be asking for.
Yeah.
If it's a respectable price, I want to re-sign him. If he's asking for too much because he had thinks he had a really great season and wants a little bit more than maybe he should get, then maybe we let him walk. I just all think it comes down to that number at the end of the day, but I would re-sign him if it's for the right price.
I agree. I would love to keep him around, but that's where it gets tricky, right? He had one of his best years in terms of production on paper. You look at the stats from Patrick Peterson this year, it was like, 26, 27-year-old Patrick Peterson numbers. So, like you said, everything's for the right price. I would like to keep him around. He's a great mentor for our DB room. I think him and Harrison Smith actually do have some good chemistry as well. I thought they gelled really well, bringing some of these guys along. But once again, it's the same thing with safety. Look at the corner room if Patrick Peterson is to leave. Yeah. I mean, we got Duke Shelley. We got a Caleb Evans. We got
Cam Dantzler
if he can come back and play. I mean, there's a lot of question marks. Yeah. Chris Boyd is probably not going to take major snaps on defense. A lot to be excited about with Andrew Booth as well, but he's another question mark. So not a ton of veteran leadership in the room. Would like to bring Pat back on another one-year deal if possible.
Yeah, and I think that's the right move as long as the numbers match up. But, in terms of trades, We talked a lot about cut, re-sign, restructure. I think there's some potential for trades, and I think the two guys that stand out for me are Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter's due a $4.9 million base here coming up in the next few months.
Yep.
They're going to have a decision to make whether they want to restructure or extend him and kind of lengthen out that base salary and lower that this next year. Or he could be a guy that's potentially traded, especially if they stay in this 3-4 system. Another guy who just seemed not to really feel comfortable, and they didn't use him to his best capabilities. If we're going to stick in a 3-4, I think you got to trade him to a 4-3. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, I love Danielle Hunter. I want to see him stay in purple, but he doesn't fit in a 3-4. He can't drop in coverage. He's a guy that puts his hand in the dirt and gets after the quarterback. And if you're not going to utilize him the right way like Ed did, you're going to see a decline in his play. And it was very up and down. And it seemed like when we gave him the ability to go after that quarterback, he made plays. But when we had him drop back and try to cover these wide receivers, it just doesn't make much sense to me in my mind. But regardless, I think it comes down to scheme. And if we stay with the 3-4 and Ed Donatel, I think he could be a guy that we see leave Minnesota during this offseason.
Unfortunately, like you said, he's a hand in the dirt type pass rusher. They say it takes, a couple of years sometimes to adjust to these schemes, but if you just look at, the type of player he is, he's meant to be getting after the quarterback every single play. You'd have to think that a 4-3 base defense is going to be chomping at the bit to try to make a deal for Danielle Hunter. Word on the street, hopefully we can get a late first round pick for him. I think that's a value, maybe a early second round pick maybe, but we only have one pick in the first 90 picks this year. At this point, I'm leaning towards trading Danielle Hunter, acquiring some draft capital. Yep. I mean, it's simple as that. You got to give these guys a chance to pick up some new players on rookie contracts. There's a lot of pass rushing. There is a lot of pass rushing options in this year's draft as well. So I think that's a tough decision to make. But if I had to make one right now, I'm gonna probably deal him.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those ones that's a tough decision. Again, like you said, but scheme based. If we're gonna roll with that scheme, you got to find the right guys for it. And to be quite honest, I'd rather have a 4-3 than a 3-4, but that's not what we're rolling with. So we got to find the best guys for the best position.
Yeah.
Touching on it though, I think talking about the draft, we have the 23rd pick, 24th, but 23rd with the Miami Dolphins forfeiting theirs. Sad day. But I think that I expect Kwesi to trade that and go down into the 29 to 32 range to try to get that second round pick from the Hawkinson trade back.
Mm-hmm.
That just seems like a move I can see already. And for him to go back and get that value in the second round, I'm all for it, because to me, 23 or 29 isn't going to be too much of a drop off at this point. And if we can secure that second round pick and keep and obviously have Hawkinson in the fold, I think that's a win, a huge win for the Vikings. And it's something that I'm looking forward to. But if there was a position in the first round that you think the Vikings are targeting, what position do you think that is?
Well, it's tough to pinpoint one. There's needs at all levels, honestly. At this point in time, I'm leaning towards best available defensive player.
I think that's where we need to be.
Is where I'm looking.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be a corner. Like I said, I want to re-sign Pat P to another 1-year deal, give some of these younger guys a chance to prove themselves. I think Andrew Booth could be a really good player. He's just got to get healthy. So I'm taking best available defense, whether that's a pass rusher, whether that's a coverage linebacker, whether that's a run-stopping defensive tackle. I think you got to look at all three. I mean, we need help on all levels. It's very obvious. And you got to find a guy who's a scheme fit, a guy who's going to come in and, make an impact right away. But like you said, I mean, I could see us trading that back. And I think if we can stockpile a couple picks here in the first 90, I'm excited about what Kwesi and Kevin can turn those into.
Yeah, I mean, it's officially mock draft season. So we're going to be seeing a lot of different possibilities and scenarios, but a lot of time till that shakes out. And we'll touch more on those details as we get closer. But before we get too far along in the offseason, I really want to kind of touch on this historic special season that the Vikings had, 13-4, 8-1 at home, 8-2, I guess, with the Giants. But regardless, one for the books, my favorite season that I've been a part of in the last handful of years, and just countless memories. Nick, what are some of your favorites from throughout this last season?
Oh, man. Well,
I think Buffalo is obviously takes the cake.
Yeah, we've touched on it a little bit in the past. Just this season as a whole, it felt like it was made for something greater, for lack of a better term. But it felt like we were building up to, this historic playoff run. John Randall's intro during the game,
Electric.
4 wins. All we need is 4 wins. Everyone's going crazy. Like you said, one of the best atmospheres we've ever seen. I think you could say that about a couple home games we had this year. We have a really great fan base, to be honest, and that's something that can't be overlooked. A lot of teams turn their back, but we have an excellent fan base, and we did everything we could. Obviously, we're not playing the game, but brought the energy week in and week out. So I say my favorite memories are just being, in the crowd, surrounded by fans, watching big plays, watching Justin Jefferson take the top off before these teams figured out that, you can put 2-3 guys on him and really blanket him over the top. I mean, people are getting just roasted by him early. Packers week 1, excellent game to watch. Watching him hit that 1-2-3 into the end zone dive for the pylon.
Start to the season.
But like I said, it just felt like, we were poised for something, but at the same time, the signs were always there with this defense, this bend, don't break defense that we were calling it all year. It finally broke, and, 11-0 in 1-score games, and then 0-1 in 1-score games in the playoffs. So, unfortunately, the luck ran out, but, you want to always win the Super Bowl, of course, especially as a Vikings fan. But if you're looking at any season that you don't win the Super Bowl as a failure, I think that you might be, interested in the wrong sport, because only one team wins it at the end of the day. And I don't want that to negate anything that we built this season, because, I mean, look at how you set a culture. I mean, it's obviously disappointing we didn't come out with a first-year head coach and GM and win the Super Bowl. How many times has that happened?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. It's about laying the groundwork for something 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, and something that we can build on culture-wise, scheme-wise, chemistry-wise. It doesn't happen overnight. And if they would have won it in their first year, that would have been something miraculous.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like you said, us being in those close games is going to pay dividends for all the guys that will be here next year. And in that locker room, that coaching staff, it gives them confidence, builds that camaraderie, and builds that culture. We've heard it from multiple players. The culture has taken a 180. Guys enjoy coming to the team facility each day, being around each other, laughing, joking, a little bit more lighthearted than it used to be, which I think was needed. But then, I think you touched on that special season that we kind of felt with those bunch of, especially at home. I mean, our Vikings fans, passionate, loyal, we're basically winning every game at home by 1 score, a lot of electric games. It's hard to really point out one. There's a handful of them, whether it was the strip sack from Cam Dantzler, the 61-yarder from Greg Joseph, Buffalo on the road. We beat Detroit in the last minutes, on and on. The list goes on and on. The double doink. I mean, there's just so many special seasons. It's been huge, so many memories. So to me, I think you're spot on. We can't really take away from how special of a season it was. There is only, at the end of the day, one team who comes away with it. Was it disappointing to lose that one at home? Yes. But do I think we're going to build forward over these next few years and this will help us? Yes, I do as well. So for me, I think you hit it on the head here with not trying to get too caught up in not winning the Super Bowl, and really understanding that with a first-year coaching staff and him being able to connect with Jefferson and this team is going to do us wonders moving forward. And overall, we have to be happy with a 13-4. We took the division from the Packers. Mm-hmm. They didn't make the playoffs. So all in all, there's a lot of good things to take away. And now we have to figure out the areas that we need to improve so we can kind of put together that full effort next year.
Yeah, and it's time to look forward now. And like I've been saying, they're going to put their fingerprint on this team. This is now their roster. They get their first full offseason. Looking at the interior offensive line, it's something that has been detrimental to the Vikings' success over the last 10, 15 years. We finally have 2 studs on the edge, obviously barring Brian O'Neill's recovery, which, I am optimistic that it will go well. We have him and Christian Darrisaw locking down the edges. We look at the interior then, a guy in Garrett Bradbury who probably played his best year as a pro. I mean, He's fighting for a contract this year. We declined his option before the season. He's playing on a contract year, a lot of extra effort, probably played through injury this last game. But at the end of the day, got handled in that last game. And, it's no easy task going against 6'5", 350 Dexter Lawrence, guys as explosive as it gets in the middle, but you got it. It's the NFL. Yeah. And, he might be good in outside zone, but once again, questions come down to his anchor, his ability in pass protection. Ezra Cleveland, another guy, showed a lot of flashes of aggressiveness this year, put some really good tape out there, honestly. I was impressed with him most of the season, but then you look at the final play of our season, and Kirk Cousins isn't able to have time to push the ball downfield. And then you look at a guy in Ed Ingram who actually probably played one of his best games of the year against the New York Giants here in the playoffs, but a guy that struggled all season in pass protection and a guy that just felt like he was starting because we really didn't have another option. Yeah. Is this an area that we look to address early in the draft and potentially go after a hometown guy, keep him home, and John Michael Schmitz, a guy from the University of Minnesota whose people are saying can plug in and start right away? Or do you look and kind of wait out Bradbury's market value in free agency and then try to offer him something on the back end?
Depending on where John Michael Schmitz is, projected to go, I think that should be our main priority. Not only is he hometown, U of M product, I think he's like you said, a bona fide plug and play type guy coming out of college. And for us, I think he's going to provide a lot more physicality in that center position. It's going to come down again, similar to Pat Pete and really all these free agents. I mean, what are you asking for? What are the Vikings willing to give up? I will say Bradbury had his best season in purple, which he needed to in a contract year. Yeah. But also we are basically, he gets bullied in those when he's playing a bigger defensive tackle. And if that's gonna happen multiple times throughout the season, we can't just hope that they're not gonna have a mauling defensive tackle who overpowers Bradbury. We need to, if we're going to re-sign him, we have to be confident. I think the main areas on offensive line that we're going to address this offseason is going to be center and right guard. I think Ezra has his areas that he needs to work on, specifically pass pro. But with him being kind of locked down at a favorable contract, I see center and right guard as the main areas to attack. And maybe we find a right guard and have Ed be that swing guard. I think he could be perfect there. And maybe he picks up his play. But regardless, I think we need to address those two positions on the line.
I agree. And you just look at championship teams over the years, and that's something that they don't neglect, really. I mean, we've been talking about this for a decade now and improving the offensive line. And, yeah, it feels great to have two tackles who are going to get it done for a long time. But, at the end of the day, you look at the New England Patriots, what do they always do? They always protected Tom Brady in the pocket, let their quarterback make plays. Guys that are sturdy, they hold up in pass protection, they move well, Good offensive linemen are a dime a dozen. There's a lot of average to mediocre to below average ones, and there's a few great ones, and we got to find our way to navigate through the draft or free agency and hopefully bring another big body in the middle for us this year. Vikes Verified is also sponsored by Joe Mama's Salsa. Joe Mama's Salsa has 5 flavors: Mama's Baby, Original, Roasted Garlic, Pineapple Mango, and Smokin' Hot Mama. You can find Joe Mama's at your neighborhood Cub Foods. Do yourself a favor and take a magic carpet ride for your mouth with Joe Mama's Salsas. All right, and I want to keep going here, Matt, as we're going to look ahead. We're going to touch a little bit on the NFC playoffs. We're not going to get too deep into it, but the Dallas Cowboys are absolutely handling the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year. It was kind of funny on social media today to see a comment, we got to look at getting rid of Cousins. Let's give Tom Brady the keys, bring him up to Minnesota. What are your thoughts on that comment?
He's not coming to Minnesota. I hate to break it, guys. He's probably going to Vegas if I had to guess. Minnesota doesn't strike me as a Tom Brady place. Maybe Justin Jefferson can make a couple calls, but ultimately I think we're going to see Kirk Cousins as our guy at QB next year, and rightfully so. I mean, we're hearing I really want to dig into this.
Yes.
The national media and everybody seems to pin a lot of these problems on Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins statistically has put up some of the best stats that he can, and this year especially stood in the pocket and took a beating throughout the year and stayed healthy
licks week in and week out.
I mean, even in this last game, he had over a handful of throws where he either had to alter his drop or make a quick pass because he had someone barreling down on him, ready to, knock him down. So for him to have that confidence, he's got the trust of these wide receivers. To me, with having Jefferson, I don't really see another alternate unless we can go get a real legitimate, QB1 like a Garoppolo or something. But no. I think that's kind of it's almost a downgrade or a trade off, right? To me, I think we see Cousins stay. Where I might see us address it is in the middle rounds of the draft. Maybe take a guy like Richardson or Will Levis. He's rumored to go high in the draft, could be middle rounds. He's all over the place. Mm-hmm. Regardless, let's maybe take a developmental guy that we can throw with KOC and our offensive staff and Justin Jefferson and just see if he can kind of build like similar to kind of under Rodgers and these other QBs. Let him sit, learn the playbook, get comfortable, and not really have to feel like you have to rush him in because we don't have time to really allow for a full season to groom a rookie quarterback with the guy in Justin Jefferson, who's due for a contract extension and is due to get paid. And the Vikings should just put a blank checkbook in there and just leave a pen and maybe just give him a nice gesture. Say,
what do you want, Justin?
Maybe be considerate, but You write the number, we're going to sign it essentially, because if we don't, somebody else will. Look at Tyreek Hill. Chiefs got a little cheap with them. Miami stepped in and said, hey, we're going to give you that and more. And now look, he's in Miami and balled out. And I, for one, know that I do not want to see Justin Jefferson in another jersey, and I can attest that the rest of Vikings Nation does not either. So to me, he's a guy that we locked down, is not a concern to me. We're going to give him whatever he wants. He is the franchise moving forward. But I think in the near future, it starts with Kirk Cousins next year and find a way to draft that developmental future quarterback coming up.
I love that, Matt. I want to say you hit everything on the head, but not quite everything. But I'm going to say, out of the gate, I want Bengals fans to be quiet. Justin Jefferson's not coming to team up with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I don't want to hear any more of that.
Can't afford it all.
I don't want to hear any more of that. So let's just put that to bed right now. But like you said, we've already had Justin Jefferson attribute success to Kirk Cousins' ability this year and years prior. He's happy with Kirk Cousins. He knows he can get him the football. But at the same time, you got to wonder what Kirk Cousins' ceiling is. I respect people that wonder that. But like I say, good quarterbacks are also a dime a dozen, like interior offensive linemen. You can't just find another quarterback who's going to come in and play at Kirk Cousins' level. Like you said, Jimmy Garoppolo, no, I see it as a downgrade, honestly. And I don't see this team going out and getting another free agent quarterback. I've also heard Lamar Jackson talk, so I think it's ridiculous for what we'd have to pay him. And questions about durability as well. He's a tremendous quarterback, but I just don't see that making sense. But Kirk Cousins, we have him under contract. He's going to be 35 years old. I understand those concerns. But look at Tom Brady. He's 45 years old. Not saying he looked great last night, but Kirk Cousins still has plenty in him. He can play. He proved that he can run the football a little bit this year. Hasn't lost a step athletically. And Justin Jefferson has said, I wouldn't be the player I am right now with the stats I have without Kirk Cousins. Yeah. And that's 100% true. So now it's about protecting that quarterback and getting complimentary guys so we don't have to throw it and force it to Jefferson all game. But like you said, last thing we want to see is Justin Jefferson in another jersey. Blank check. I'm totally down for it. Let's keep him around whichever way possible. And like you said, drafting that developmental prospect who could maybe come in and be groomed to take over the reins at some point. I don't see us getting a free agent. We need to stick with Kirk Cousins, and we need to build around him and get him a defense. He was one drive away from putting the Giants away at home, and really, we should have won the game without even having that final drive. We put a defense around him. This is an offense that's going to be very dangerous.
Yeah, and I think, you're totally right. Everything starts around Jefferson, and Jefferson's laid it out on the table. He, was quoted to say, I will be wherever I'm wanted. If they want me here, I'm here. That's not something that I can really control. Essentially what that means is pay me what I deserve, or I'll go find someone else who will, and that's just straight facts.
I would do the same.
Some people are misconstruing it as him being a diva or these different things. It's straight facts. If we aren't going to pay him, somebody else in this league is going to pay him and
Absolutely.
More. So this is very fair. Like I said, have him just sign that dotted line, figure it out. I trust Rob Brzezinski. He's a cap guru. I know that KOC and Kwesi have him as his main priority. And really, I think a main factor in this whole contract negotiations is going to be his relationship with Kevin O'Connell. I think seeing what they've done throughout the season, having weekly meetings, Justin Jefferson didn't even know where the head coach's room was before Kevin O'Connell got in the building.
Ridiculous.
Taking those steps goes a long ways towards keeping somebody here. And you see what happens when you don't in Stephon Diggs. You don't have meetings with him. You don't make him feel like a valued wide receiver one, and maybe you don't find ways to maximize his potential. Instead of, he got to a point where instead of trying to, work it out, he felt like if you're not going to use me, someone else will. And that's exactly what happened. Now, thank God that was about the best win-win trade there has been in NFL history.
Yeah.
So I'm glad everything shook out the way that it did. But Justin Jefferson is a much different personality and characteristics than Diggs. Now, they're both bona fide wide receiver ones, but Justin Jefferson seems to have a little bit more, humbleness, personality to him. So, I take that and run with it. To me, he's the guy that's going to bring everybody up around him. And I think we've touched on it multiple times. It doesn't matter what we pay him. Just cash that check and get him on the books because we need to see him in purple and gold.
Yeah, and exactly. And this is still fresh, right? We lost 2 days ago. This hurts. And people come on Twitter and say, is Justin Jefferson going to be happy in Minnesota? Can he win a championship in Minnesota? You think he really wants to be in Minnesota?
It's coming.
Let's not forget the fact that he almost set an NFL record for receiving yards this year, blew out our franchise record with the greatest receiver of all time, arguably, Randy Moss, on our roster previously. I mean, this is a first-year head coach. He's on a playoff team, 13-4 team. You don't think he's looking at the future and something he can build on here? Absolutely. There's not too many better places to be than in Minnesota for Justin Jefferson right now, to be honest. And we're going to build around him, get him a defense, get him an offensive line, and I wouldn't be surprised if he crosses that 2,000-yard mark in his career.
Yeah, and a guy I want to see paired with him with these contract extensions is TJ Hawkinson. Huge trade for us mid-year. Yes. Without Irv being injured and Johnny Munt being who he is and not really being a tight end one, that was just a necessary trade. Now Irv Smith may be a guy that we see go somewhere else, as we do now have Hawkinson, and I don't think Irv's going to want to take on that second tight end role. But I've enjoyed my time, watching him here. But unfortunately, I think TJ has kind of taken over that role. But he rode with it. I mean, he was second, and I want to say catches, targets, yards, just about everything. He was top 5 in, and he's a guy that is a Midwestern guy, loves it here. Was pumping up the crowd multiple times. He brings energy. I just think he fits into our culture and our team, and another guy who's going to be due for a contract extension. Now, I don't know if he's as much of a blank check, but he's pretty damn close. So again, I think those two are going to be the highlights of our passing game and our two lockdown guys.
Our
and then
core.
You got KJ Osborne and our supplemental guys and KJ is going to be a guy that's going to be tough because he keeps balling. He's going to get paid. That price is just going up and up. Yes, so
as it should.
That's going to be an interesting one to see how it falls out. But I think everything revolves around Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson, and that is the future of this Vikings offense.
That's the duo. That's the core.
And CD.
I believe it was Dustin Baker who initially referred to TJ Hawkinson as the logo, which I love that nickname. I mean, look at the guy. He looks like a Viking. He's the Vikings logo. Like you said, Midwestern, homegrown guy. I mean, it's truly incredible to see him just fit right into this offense. I think it was the Commanders game, his first game, I believe. Watching him go over the middle in his first game in our uniform. I mean, another guy who takes hits over the middle, but he does the dirty work. He holds onto the ball. He gets yards after the catch. He really became Kirk Cousins' safety blanket in a lot of ways over the middle. He was looking at Hawkinson when he didn't have anything else, and he's a guy who can, regardless of what happened on the final play, not being able to break a tackle, he's a guy that can break tackles and get loose in the open field. He's incredible in the red zone. I mean, goes up and gets the football. He's everything you want in a modern-day tight end, and I know that Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi brought him in for a reason, and they're going to keep him around for a reason. No question. I want to leave Vikings fans with something here regarding our cap space. Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Harrison Smith, and Eric Kendricks will count for a combined $64,714,801 against the salary cap in 2023. That is 29% of the projected $220+ million salary cap. That is something that I want to leave you with, and I want Vikings fans to be ready to see somewhat of a cutthroat offseason here. I think this is one where Kwesi's going to dive deep into the numbers. Like we said, he doesn't care about our allegiance to the players. He doesn't care about the fan favorites. Sure, loyalty is important, but he's trying to build a football team. And do not be surprised if 2, 3, maybe even all 4 of these guys are gone next year.
I think you're spot on. It's going to be an emotional offseason, one that's going to be hard to process for us Vikes fans who has watched these players for the last handful to a decade almost. Yeah, it's been a long time. Built so many memories. I think our loyalty as fans makes it even harder, right? We've got that Minnesota nice in us. We build there's been a lot of relationships built throughout the community with these guys. They've made a lot of big time plays and memories for us that are ones that stick with us. Mm-hmm. And you're spot on. I think with Kwesi and KOC being the new regime this last year, I think they took more of a slight rebuild, mainly retool. This year, I think we're going to see a little bit more of that rebuild competitively, though. We're not tanking, but we're going to have to get rid of some of these aging guys, which is where I think when we talked about those 5 to 7 guys who are on the cusp of potentially being cut or restructured, we will see a lot of the restructures, but I do think we're going to see 1 to 2 of them be cut/traded. Mm-hmm. And that's tough. I think restructures are a win-win because the fans feel like, hey, we're keeping them around. We're saving some money. Still a good
Converting
player.
into signing bonus, Brzezinski special.
He's got a couple tricks up his sleeve, and I can't wait to see what he does with this cap space. But I do think we see the end of a couple of our, dear
Vikings
Vikings
faithful.
players. And it's going to be a tough one to swallow, but we do have to understand that in order to move forward, you have to sometimes take away from things that have been the same for years and years, right? We need to find a new combination to make this thing finally work and chase that Super Bowl that we've all been wanting for years.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm more than ready to make that run and at least see what it feels like. And I know Kwesi and KOC are the guys to lead us there. So I trust them in full. And I'm excited to see what they do this offseason because Kwesi's got a little bit of Spielman in him, a little Trader Rick in him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to make moves. A lot of it's more based on analytics and value. But I'm excited to see what this duo can do and what this team's going to look like come fall.
So am I. And we got no choice but to look forward right now, unfortunately. And, change can be a scary thing in all facets of your life, but, it's not always a bad thing. And I think that's something that we got to go into this offseason thinking about is things are going to look different in Vikings Nation next year. But regardless of how they look, we're still going to be here. Vikes Verified podcast. As always, SKOL Vikings on to next year in the offseason, baby.
Keep the faith, Vikes Nation. We're passionate. We're loyal. We're going to come back better next year, and we're going to chase the same damn thing. A Super Bowl and that Lombardi trophy. Let's
SKOL.
keep the faith, keep the effort. SKOL.